Welcome back to ABC General Hospital Spoilers Channel. Today, we will learn about the explosive revelations that will rock Port Charles to its very foundation on Tuesday, November 25th, as Jason Morgan finds himself navigating treacherous waters while dealing with the catastrophic fallout from Professor Henry Hank Dalton's mysterious demise. The intricate web of deception grows ever more tangled when Carly Corinthos stumbles upon an unexpected development that threatens to unravel carefully laid plans, setting the stage for a cascade of dramatic confrontations and heart-wrenching decisions that will leave viewers breathless. Jason Morgan's damage control operation reaches critical intensity as he meticulously eliminates every trace of Dalton's presence from Laura Collins' vehicle, his experienced hands moving with methodical precision through the darkened streets of Port Charles. The weight of this clandestine cleanup mission presses heavily on his shoulders, knowing that one missed fingerprint or overlooked strand of evidence could send multiple lives spiraling into chaos. After ensuring that Laura's car gleams with suspicious cleanliness, Jason makes his way back to Britt Westburn's doorstep, his heart pounding with a rare mixture of determination and vulnerability that he seldom allows himself to feel. Standing beneath the porch light, Jason will deliver an impassioned assurance to Britt, his voice raw with sincerity as he explains that his abrupt departure had been an absolute necessity born from circumstances beyond his control. The former hitman's eyes will search Britt's face for any sign of understanding, desperate to bridge the chasm of doubt that has formed between them through his recent mysterious absences. Britt, standing framed in the doorway, with her arms crossed and expression guarded, will weigh Jason's heartfelt words against the pattern of disappearances that has defined their complicated relationship. Jason's mission to prove his worthiness of Britt's trust will involve more than mere words. He will present tangible evidence of his commitment, perhaps revealing glimpses of the dangerous work he's been undertaking to protect those he loves. The emotional stakes between these two damaged souls will reach a fever pitch as Jason lays bare his intentions, forcing Britt to confront whether her heart can survive another round of Jason Morgan's particular brand of devoted chaos. Across town in the bustling police precinct, Dante Falconeri will make a solemn vow that carries the weight of fatherly desperation and professional integrity, his jaw set with determination as he contemplates the legal quagmire engulfing his son Rocco Falconeri. The timing of this promise proves crucial, as Dalton's permanent exit from the picture creates a vacuum of blame that threatens to suck Rocco deeper into the justice system's machinery. Dante's vow may be directed toward Lulu Spencer, Olivia Falconeri, or even to himself in a moment of quiet reflection, but the underlying commitment remains unshakable. He will save his son from becoming collateral damage in Port Charles' endless cycle of violence and retribution. The complications stemming from Dalton's disappearance will ripple through the investigation, with authorities scrambling to locate a suspect who has quite literally vanished into thin air, leaving Dante to navigate the treacherous intersection of his duties as a detective and his responsibilities as a father. The twists and turns promised by this storyline will likely involve unexpected alliances, perhaps drawing in characters from Rocco's past or revealing hidden connections to the Dalton case that no one could have anticipated. Dante's journey will test the boundaries of the law he has sworn to uphold versus the unconditional love he holds for his child, creating a moral ambiguity that defines the best of General Hospital's character-driven drama. The legal strategy masterminded by Alexis Davis and Rick Lansing will pivot dramatically on their shared intention to redirect culpability toward the conveniently absent Professor Dalton, painting him as the architect of the bogus lab destruction accusations that have thrown multiple lives into disarray. Their courtroom chess game depends entirely on Dalton's presence to serve as a living, breathing scapegoat for the crimes in question, making his sudden disappearance both a blessing and a curse. Alexis, with her sharp legal mind and complicated history with the Corinthos organization, will work tirelessly to build a case that points every finger of guilt toward Dalton's alleged misdeeds, while Rick's own brand of legal maneuvering adds layers of complexity to their defense strategy. Assistant District Attorney Justine Turner will become an increasingly aggressive force in this narrative, Her ambition and pursuit of justice colliding as she pushes Detective Nathan West to escalate his efforts to take Dalton into custody immediately. Turner's pressure will create intense professional friction within the Port Charles Police Department, as Nathan finds himself caught between his superior's demands and the impossible reality that Dalton is not merely missing, but deceased and disposed of by Jason's careful hand. The absence of a body will initially be interpreted as Dalton fleeing justice, buying valuable time for Alexis and Rick's legal strategy, while simultaneously creating a ticking clock scenario that threatens to expose the entire cover-up. Nathan's investigation will likely uncover inconsistencies that point toward a larger conspiracy, potentially putting him on a collision course with Jason and the Corinthos organization that could forever alter his standing within the department. Laura Collins will find herself paralyzed by indecision in the quiet moments before dawn, reevaluating her fateful choice to seek Sonny Corinthos' assistance rather than placing her faith in the legitimate authorities sworn to serve and protect Port Charles. The former mayor's conscience, always her guiding force through decades of political and personal turmoil, will scream that confession represents the only path to true salvation, tempting her to march into the police station and deliver a complete accounting of how Jen Sidwell masterfully engineered her setup. Laura's internal monologue will be a tempest of conflicting loyalties and legal realities, weighing the potential destruction of her own reputation against the possibility of clearing her name through complete transparency. Sonny Corinthos, operating from his position of calculated power, will deliver a stern warning that cuts through Laura's moral quandary like a knife, insisting that she must adhere to the cover-up plan with unwavering discipline. The coffee importer's rationale will be coldly logical. If Laura chooses this moment to confess about Dalton's corpse riding in her trunk, she will inevitably face criminal charges ranging from obstruction to accessory after the fact, and Sonny himself would be dragged down in the ensuing legal maelstrom. Their confrontation will likely occur in one of Sonny's secluded safe houses, or perhaps during a tense meeting in the Corinthos coffee warehouse, where the aroma of imported beans mingles with the stench of criminal conspiracy. Sonny's persuasive power, honed through decades of controlling Port Charles' underground economy, will work to convince Laura that silence equals survival, even as her mayoral instincts cry out for the transparency she once championed. Lucas Jones will seek sanctuary in the familiar confines of General Hospital, confiding his growing apprehensions to Elizabeth Baldwin during a quiet moment away from the constant chaos of the emergency room. Lucas' demeanor will project a palpable sense of being unnerved, his medical training clashing with his intuitive recognition that the atmosphere at Windermere has shifted from merely tense to actively dangerous. The unease will stem from his observations of the escalating friction between the enigmatic Jen Sidwell and the increasingly concerned Marco Rios, whose body language and hushed conversations suggest an empire teetering on the brink of internal collapse, even if Marco remains ignorant of the specific details surrounding Dalton's fate. His years of experience working alongside his father will have attuned him to the deadly serious nature of Sidwell's current operations. The younger Rios will sense that his father is once again orchestrating drastic measures that could draw unwanted attention from both law enforcement and rival criminal organizations, creating a perfect storm of risk that threatens everyone in their orbit. Lucas, with his insider perspective as both a medical professional and someone with deep connections to Port Charles' most prominent families, will pick up on subtle cues that others might miss, the way Sidwell's jaw tightens when certain names are mentioned, the cryptic phone calls that send Marco scrambling from the room, the unusual security presence around Windermere's perimeters, Elizabeth, drawing from her own extensive history with danger and deception in Port Charles, will offer counsel that may prove crucial in helping Lucas navigate the treacherous waters he's found himself swimming in. The passionate interlude between Jocelyn Jacks and S. Vaughn will erupt with volcanic intensity, their shared moments of intimacy casting long shadows over the mounting dangers that surround them at Windermere. Jocelyn, caught between her fierce independence and her growing feelings for the mysterious Vaughn, will find herself consumed by worries about Lucas' safety, recognizing that her mother's partner has unwittingly placed himself in the crosshairs of powerful enemies. The young Jack's daughter's concern will be amplified by her own recent experiences with Port Charles' criminal underworld, making her acutely aware of how quickly innocent bystanders can become casualties in wars they never signed up for. Their romantic encounter will be punctuated by the constant awareness that every stolen moment could be their last, creating an urgency that fuels their connection while simultaneously threatening to tear it apart. Jack Brennan's ominous arrival in Monday's episode will serve as a harbinger of consequences, his presence signaling that someone will face punishment for disobeyed orders. Though the specifics of his retribution remain shrouded in mystery, the timing of Brennan's appearance suggests that Jocelyn and Vaughn's bedroom activities may have violated some unseen directive or territorial boundary, potentially placing them in the crosshairs of a powerful figure who brooks no insubordination. The consequences of their passion could manifest as anything from veiled threats to outright physical danger, forcing Jocelyn to confront whether her heart's desires are worth the price they may demand. Carlyle's unexpected encounter with her daughter will likely occur under circumstances that immediately raise maternal alarm bells, perhaps catching Jocelyn in a compromised position or with evidence of her time with Vaughn written clearly across her face. The Corinthos matriarch's surprise will be compounded by her own complex history with dangerous men and her fierce protective instincts toward her children, setting the stage for a mother-daughter confrontation that could expose multiple secrets simultaneously. This collision of Carlyle's discovery and Jocelyn's hidden romance will create a ripple effect that touches nearly every storyline in play, potentially drawing the Corinthos family deeper into the web of deception surrounding Dalton's death and Sidwell's machinations. Next, we will learn about the explosive confrontation brewing between two of Port Charles's most powerful figures, as Sonny Corinthos finds himself pushed to the absolute limit by Jen Sidwell's increasingly dangerous machinations. The intricate web of deception and retaliation has ensnared some of the town's most beloved residents, setting the stage for a mob war that could reshape the criminal landscape of the entire region for years to come. At the heart of this maelstrom lies a shocking discovery that would rattle even the most seasoned politician. As Mayor Laura Collins stumbles upon a sight that no elected official should ever have to witness, especially not in the midst of what should have been the pinnacle moment of her political career. The evening air hung heavy with unseasonable humidity as Laura Collins approached her vehicle behind the Port Charles Municipal Building, her mind still swimming with the intoxicating victory of her recent election win. Campaign confetti still clung to her blazer, a physical reminder of the celebration that had filled the ballroom just hours earlier, where supporters had toasted to her continued leadership and vision for the city's future. Nothing could have prepared her for the gut-wrenching sight that awaited her in the trunk of her official mayoral vehicle, where the lifeless form of Professor Henry Hank Dalton lay sprawled in grotesque repose, his academic tweed jacket stained with evidence of violence that contradicted every scholarly lecture he had ever delivered. The shock radiated through Laura's body like an electric current, her political poise evaporating instantly as she slammed the trunk closed with trembling hands, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps that fogged in the cool evening air. This wasn't merely a murder victim. This was the very man she had publicly threatened during a heated confrontation at the Port Charles University Faculty Lounge just days prior, a fact that would undoubtedly place her at the top of every suspect list the moment this crime came to light. Instinctively, Laura's fingers found their way to her phone, scrolling through her contacts with shaking hands until she landed on the one name in Port Charles who operated outside the conventional boundaries of law and order, yet possessed an unwavering code of loyalty that had served her well in past crises. Sonny Corinthos answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood that calls at this hour never brought good news, but rather emergencies that required immediate, decisive action. Laura's words tumbled out in a frantic rush, describing the impossible scene in her trunk, the implications for her political future, and the paralyzing fear that she was being framed by forces who wanted to see her destroyed. Sonny's response came with the calm authority of a man who had navigated countless storms, his tone steady as he assured her that he would handle everything, that she needed to return inside the building and maintain appearances while he summoned the one person he trusted above all others for operations of this delicate nature. Within 20 minutes, Jason Morgan materialized from the shadows of the parking structure, his presence barely announcing itself beyond the subtle echo of motorcycle boots on concrete. The enforcer moved with methodical precision, his years of experience in making problems disappear evident in every measured step as he circled Laura's vehicle, assessing the situation with the detached professionalism of a surgeon preparing for a complex procedure. Jason's mind cataloged potential evidence, forensic vulnerabilities, and the most efficient disposal method, his internal calculations running through scenarios like a chess grandmaster seeing 10 moves ahead. The cleanup operation would require more than simply removing the body. It necessitated eradicating every microscopic trace of Dalton's presence from the vehicle's interior, a task that would consume the better part of the night and demand resources that only the Corinthos organization could mobilize on such short notice. As Jason set to work, his phone lit up with encrypted messages coordinating a containment team, a forensic countermeasures specialist, and a transportation vehicle that would leave no digital footprint for Port Charles PD to trace. While Jason orchestrated the physical disappearance, Sonny and Laura sequestered themselves in the mayoral office, the formal surroundings feeling increasingly like a gilded cage as they dissected the list of potential orchestrators. The conversation flowed between them with the ease of two people who had weathered decades of Port Charles chaos together, their shared history providing a shorthand that eliminated the need for lengthy explanations. Laura's analytical mind, sharpened by years of political maneuvering, kept circling back to one name that seemed to fit the crime's audacious signature perfectly. Jen Sidwell, the international crime lord, had recently escalated his operations in Port Charles, his sophisticated network making subtle power plays that Sonny had been monitoring with growing concern. The method of the setup, placing a high-profile murder victim in the mayor's own vehicle, bore all the hallmarks of Sidwell's theatrical approach to intimidation. His desire to demonstrate reach and impunity by violating the sanctity of elected office. Sonny listened carefully as Laura detailed Sidwell's recent attempts to influence city policy through back channels, his frustration mounting with each revelation of how far the rival boss had already infiltrated the town's institutional foundations. The confrontation building between the two crime bosses promised to be nothing short of seismic, with Port Charles serving as the unwilling arena for a clash that had been brewing since Sidwell first set his sights on the territory Sonny had spent decades cultivating. When the inevitable face-off occurs, likely in one of those abandoned warehouses that dot the waterfront district where Sonny's peer operations grant him home field advantage, the tension will crackle like electricity between them. Sidwell, with his continental sophistication and maddening composure, will probably lean against some rusted machinery, his expression carrying the amused detachment of a cat toying with a cornered mouse. He'll deny everything with such convincing sincerity that even a polygraph would struggle to register deception, yet his eyes will hold a challenge that speaks volumes more than any confession could. The verbal sparring will dance around explicit admissions, using coded language and implied threats that only those fluent in the criminal dialect would fully comprehend. Sonny's temper, legendary throughout the eastern seaboard, will strain against his self-control as Sidwell's smug demeanor confirms Laura's theory without a single word of confirmation crossing his lips. Beneath the surface of this territorial dispute runs a deeper current of personal violation that fuels Sonny's rage beyond mere business competition. Laura Collins represents something rare in Sonny's world: genuine friendship untainted by fear or transactional obligation, a bond forged through shared tragedies and triumphs that transcended the social barriers separating the mayor's mansion from the coffee importer's warehouse. Watching her tremble in his office, her political armor shattered by the trauma of discovering Dalton's corpse, awakened a protective instinct that Sonny typically reserves for his own children. The image of Laura, who had stood unflinching during hostage crises, disease outbreaks, and political scandals reduced to a state of visceral terror, ignited a fury that promised to burn cold and methodical. Sonny's mind replayed the moment she described finding Dalton, the way her voice had cracked on specific details, how she had physically recoiled when mentioning the blood staining the professor's academic regalia. Those memories would fuel his determination to ensure Laura never suffered such violation again, even if it meant crossing lines he had previously hesitated to approach. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on either of them as they sat in the mayoral office, surrounded by the trappings of legitimate power that suddenly seemed impotent against the forces arrayed against them. Sonny had, in fact, wanted Dalton eliminated for entirely separate reasons tied to protecting his nephew Rocco Falconeri from a legal nightmare that threatened to derail the young man's entire future. The professor's untimely demise, while traumatic for Laura, served Sonny's interests perfectly, eliminating a key witness whose testimony could have buried Rocco under decades of prison time. This convergence of interests, Laura needing Dalton gone to avoid murder charges, Sonny needing him silenced to save his nephew, created a grim alliance that bound them closer than any political endorsement ever could. However, the public nature of Dalton's disappearance would raise questions that no amount of official spin could fully suppress. ADA Justine Turner, with her reputation for tenacity and her particularly focused interest in dismantling the Corinthos organization, would undoubtedly connect the dots between Dalton's sudden vanishing and Rocco's pending case. Her investigative team would likely begin surveillance operations, pulling traffic camera footage and cell phone tower data, building a circumstantial case that could prove devastating even without a body. The legal jeopardy extended beyond Sonny's immediate circle to threaten the very foundation of Laura's mayoralty, creating a crisis that could end her career and land her in prison if even a single piece of evidence surfaced linking her to Dalton's death. Sonny understood the stakes with crystal clarity, his mind already working through contingency plans that involved everything from witness protection protocols to last resort extraction scenarios that would relocate Laura out of the country if necessary. His legal team, a cadre of high-powered attorneys who specialized in criminal defense for the organization, would need to coordinate with Laura's own counsel to ensure their stories aligned perfectly while maintaining plausible deniability. The challenge lay in protecting Laura without appearing to interfere in the investigation, a delicate balance that required manipulating information flow to Ada Turner's office through carefully cultivated sources within the justice system. Every move had to be calculated, every alibi ironclad, because Justine Turner wouldn't hesitate to indict a sitting mayor if she smelled blood in the water. And a case this sensational would make her career. Rocco Falconeri's predicament had dominated family discussions for weeks, the weight of potential prison time hanging over every Corinthos family gathering like a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. Dalton's silence, permanent and unassailable, meant the most serious charges against Rocco would collapse for lack of a complaining witness, though lesser charges might still require legal maneuvering. Sonny had already instructed his attorneys to file motions for immediate dismissal, citing the professor's documented history of erratic behavior and the absence of any cooperating witness to testify about the alleged incident. The family's relief would be palpable, particularly for Rocco's mother, Olivia Falconeri, who had been barely holding herself together while her son's future hung in the balance. Yet this victory came tainted with the knowledge of how it was achieved, forcing the family to grapple with moral compromises that defied easy justification. Rocco himself would struggle with the realization that his freedom came at such a high price, potentially creating fractures within the Corinthos family dynamic that could take years to heal, if they ever did. The decision to eliminate Sidwell, once considered an absolute last resort to be avoided at all costs, now seemed increasingly inevitable as Sonny processed the full scope of the threat posed by his rival. Their previous conversation about neutralizing the international crime lord had ended with Sonny advocating caution, suggesting they exhaust every diplomatic and economic pressure point before resorting to violence. That restraint had always been a hallmark of Sonny's leadership, the quality that distinguished him from more reckless adversaries who burned through allies and territories with thoughtless aggression. However, Sidwell's latest move represented a fundamental escalation that could not be ignored, a direct attack on the personal relationships that formed the bedrock of Sonny's power structure. The calculated nature of the setup targeting Laura specifically, timing it to her election victory, demonstrated Sidwell's intelligence network and his willingness to use psychological warfare alongside traditional mob tactics. Sonny recognized that leaving such provocations unanswered would signal weakness, inviting further attacks on his inner circle, perhaps next targeting Carly, his sons Michael and Dante, or even his young daughter Donna. The Measure C vote, which had secured Sonny's control over the waterfront piers and dealt a significant blow to Sidwell's expansion plans, now seemed almost trivial compared to the personal war being waged between these two titans of organized crime. The victory celebration in Sonny's office, where associates had toasted with expensive scotch while reviewing profit projections, felt like a distant memory from a simpler time when business disputes followed predictable patterns. Sidwell's refusal to accept the electoral outcome, his determination to contest the results through extra-legal means, transformed what should have been a settled matter into a protracted conflict with no clear resolution. Sonny's strategic mind began mapping out the waterfront's defensive vulnerabilities, identifying which piers offered sight lines for snipers, which warehouses could be fortified against assault, and which routes provided escape paths if Sidwell launched a full-scale offensive. The piers, once merely a lucrative revenue stream, had become the symbolic heart of their territorial dispute, a chessboard where each move carried life-or-death consequences for everyone involved. Looking ahead, the threat assessment grew increasingly dire as Sonny contemplated which of his loved ones might find themselves in Sidwell's crosshairs next. The enemy's pattern suggested a preference for high-impact targets whose suffering would deliver maximum psychological damage, making Carly Corinthos, with her high profile and business visibility, a likely candidate for harassment or worse. Michael, operating within the legitimate corporate sphere, presented a more complex target but remained vulnerable through his family connections and business partnerships that Sidwell could exploit. Dante's position as a police officer offered some protection through institutional security, yet also made him a symbolic target whose removal would devastate Sonny while sending a message to law enforcement. Even young Avery and Donna, theoretically off-limits in the traditional mob code, might not be safe given Sidwell's demonstrated willingness to violate established norms. This expanding threat matrix forced Sonny to consider extreme protective measures, potentially relocating family members to secure compounds, assigning round-the-clock security details, and restricting their movements in ways that would fundamentally alter their quality of life but might be necessary for survival. The transition from cautious restraint to vengeful determination marked a fundamental shift in Sonny's approach to the Sidwell problem, representing a point of no return that would ripple through every corner of his organization. His famous dimples, which had been absent since Laura's distress call, now set in a grim line that associates recognized as the precursor to decisive, irrevocable action. The coffee in his office grew cold as Sonny plotted, his mind visualizing scenarios where Sidwell's operation suffered systematic dismantlement, each component destroyed with the precision of a military campaign. This wouldn't be a rash act of violence, but a carefully orchestrated operation designed to neutralize the threat permanently while sending an unambiguous message to any other rivals who might contemplate similar moves against his family. The revenge plot would likely involve multiple phases. First, crippling Sidwell's financial infrastructure through coordinated attacks on his money laundering fronts. Second, eliminating his key lieutenants to disrupt command and control. And third, confronting the man himself in a final reckoning that would echo through criminal organizations up and down the eastern seaboard. General Hospital spoilers promise that viewers will witness this transformation in real time, watching as Sonny's methodical planning gives way to action that will leave Port Charles forever changed. And we will provide continuous updates as this epic revenge saga unfolds.